Добрый вечер. Спасибо большое за то, что вы сегодня в конце такого длинного дня, как понедельник, все собрались, оторвались от своих проектов, от своей работы и выделили время послушать лекцию нашего уважаемого гостя. Не знаю, как у вас, у нас был ужасно длинный день. Мы начали почти в 5 утра, чтобы всех успеть повидать. Но я надеюсь, что мы сейчас взбодримся с Брайаном, у него еще джетлаг. Он еще до сих пор не переключился на наше время. И еще мы сюда пришли, когда мы на охраннику, значит, говорим, мы пришли на семинар. И он нас это спрашивает, на семинар про эвтаназию. И я про себя задумался, вот если сейчас вот кто-нибудь в такое время, при такой погоде и при таком общей атмосфере еще и про эвтаназию разговаривает, ужас просто. У нас намного более веселая тема. Большой год сейчас проходит. У нас год отличается от нормального календарного года. У всех людей год, значит, с 1 января до 31 декабря. У нас в Microsoft так называемый финансовый год, он с 1 июля до 30 июня. Так вот, мы сейчас где-то внутри Microsoft, где-то в середине года находимся, и для нас это очень большой год. Но он очень большой не только для нас, но и для вас тоже. Сейчас я объясню почему. Для нас он большой, потому что мы в этом году выпускаем много новых технологий. Понятно, что мы коммерческая организация, я не хочу отравлять вас какой-то рекламой и маркетингом, но много продуктов наших выходит, и нашими технологиями, правда, пользуются миллионы людей по всему миру. Да? Там Windows операционная система в этом году вышла, Windows 8. Вы, наверное, все уже слышали, что мы в этом году наконец-то выпустили настоящего убийцу iPad. У нас свой слейд появился, очень классно. Даже если у нас такой не появился, то у наших партнеров точно такие есть. Вот. В любом случае на этих слайдах работает лучшая в мире операционная система Windows 8. На базе нее настроена куча других технологий. Технологии разработки, которыми занимается наша с Брайаном группа. В России этими технологиями занимается департамент стратегических технологий, в котором я работаю. Я забыл представиться, да? Меня зовут Денис Котляров. Я работаю в департаменте стратегических технологий, отвечаю за продвижение средств для разработчиков. Главная цель всей моей работы, чтобы вы, во-первых, любили программировать, а во-вторых, любили программировать на нашей платформе, на наших инструментах. Мы эти инструменты, эти технологии разрабатываем с большой любовью к вам, к разработчикам. Стараемся туда привносить самые лучшие инновационные решения и идеи. Брайан об этом как раз будет сегодня рассказывать. Помимо Windows выходит Office. Да, уж где-то еще можно спорить, лидеры мы или нет, но в офисе, в сегменте то, что называется productivity tools, да, инструментов, повышающих личную производительность человека, аналогов пока нет. Офис это абсолютный лидер, де-факто такой стандарт документооборота и вообще обеспечения работы бизнес-сотрудников. В этом году выходит новая версия, тоже очень много нововведений, очень много интересных вещей. Я не знаю, завтра, вы, наверное, слышали, завтра у нас проходит крупнейшая в году технологическая конференция Microsoft TechEd. С этой конференции там же выступает Брайан, я там тоже буду выступать. Я, например, буду там завтра рассказывать про разработку нового типа приложений под офис. Тоже подключайтесь, послушайте. Помимо Windows и офиса, когда выходит новая продуктовая линейка, всегда с этими продуктами выпускаются новые средства разработки. Они, правда, выходят традиционно немножко пораньше. Вот Visual Studio 2012 версия, мы ее запустили в сентябре. Это абсолютно новый инструмент разработки. Я не буду про это говорить, потому что Брайан об этом очень много сейчас вам расскажет. Про наше видение того, что такое современная разработка программного обеспечения, какие технологии, как мы считаем, естественно, наши лучше всего к этому подходят, но мы еще расскажем, почему мы так считаем. Это не просто так вот мы себе придумали, что наши технологии лучше всего. В общем, большой для нас год, очень много всяких технологий и продуктов выходит. Но в этом году еще в России пройдет очень интересное мероприятие, которое курируется нашей компанией. Оно называется Imagine Cup. Кто слышал про Imagine Cup? Отлично, я очень рад, что вы слышали. Это потрясающая инициатива нашей компании. Мы как такая капиталистическая компания, нам редко удается делать что-то по-настоящему хорошее. Вот, помимо своих продуктов, конечно. Вот Imagine Cup это такая совершенно добрая, бескорыстная инициатива, когда наша компания придумала конкурс. Это конкурс инновационного творчества, суть которого, я рассказываю для тех, кто еще не в курсе, таких пара человек всего, но расскажем им, раз они отстали от жизни. Так вот, по всему миру для всех молодых людей в возрасте от 16 до скольки-то там лет. Но не пугайтесь, если вы такие же взрослые, как и я уже, вы все равно можете участвовать в Imagine Cup, правда, в качестве наставника. Так вот, в рамках Imagine Cup проводится конкурс программных проектов. Проводятся сначала региональные отборы на уровне стран. Эти региональные отборы разделены на два этапа. Есть отбор на уровне региона, там, допустим, Москва, Северо-Запад и так далее. Выбираются победители на уровне этих регионов, дальше они приглашаются на финал на уровне страны, дальше выбирается одна лучшая команда по всему миру, которая едет на некий международный финал. И этот международный финал это как Олимпиада, каждый год выбирается новая страна, и мы там внутри Microsoft все боремся, чтобы победить, чтобы именно в нашей стране проводился этот финал. И вот мы боролись лет 8 за то, чтобы в Россию этот финал пришел. И в этом году победили наконец-то, победили эту корпорацию зла, всех наших коллег, которые по всему миру были против нас, и привезли этот праздник в Россию. Мы очень хотели это сделать, потому что у нас в России очень много творческих людей, у нас в России очень много изобретают. Мы устали от того, что нам приходится, мы куда-то в мире там приезжаем, и все люди удивляются: о, Касперский это российская компания, о, Parallels это российская компания, о, там, Эбби это российская компания. Мы от этого устали. Мы хотим, чтобы все поняли по всему миру, что в России есть программисты, есть умные, талантливые люди, которые могут изобретать. И вот финал Imagine Cup международный, вот этот международный финал этого конкурса программных проектов, он, нам кажется, поможет всему миру это донести. Это будет такой замечательный праздник. Вообще-то, настоящий праздник в этом участвовать. Я вот такую длинную речь толкаю, чтобы вас всех призвать. Кто еще не задумался участвовать, обязательно найдите в себе силы. Если вы уже не студент, то соберите команду из студентов. Если вы студент, обязательно участвуйте. Потому что, во-первых, есть очень хорошая денежная мотивация. В рамках всего проводится 3 разных конкурса программных проектов, и в каждой категории вручается 3 приза. 10, 30, по-моему, тысяч долларов, и первый приз 50 тысяч долларов. Это деньги, которые, никто не спрашивает у вас, как вы их потратите. Их не обязательно тратить там на развитие своего проекта. Можете их тратить, не знаю, на свой какой-нибудь шикарный отдых. Это ваш приз. Помимо таких вот каких-то очевидных призов, есть еще большой приз в форме того, что все крупнейшие венчурные фонды, все крупнейшие инвесторы, которые в стране есть, они там будут. Они будут в комиссии, они будут смотреть проекты. Все время 3, 4 лучших проектов из Imagine Cup, они уходят дальше, превращаются в какие-то реальные проекты, в какие-то реальные дела. Я лично участвовал, доходил до финала Imagine Cup, будучи студентом, 2 раза. Оба раза мне не удалось попасть на международный финал. Другая история, там всех засудили, в общем, как всегда. Вот. Но опыт этот для меня прошел не зря, потому что, участвуя в Imagine Cup, меня там заметили рекрутеры из Intel компании, я попал на стажировку в Intel, вот сейчас работаю и считаю, что очень неплохо устроился в жизни. И для студентов действительно такое, вот мы часто говорим про эти социальные лестницы, вот вам самая очевидная социальная лестница. Участвуйте в конкурсе, проявите себя, сделайте интересный проект, и вас обязательно заметят, за вас будут уже бороться другие люди. Сам по себе конкурс, суть его в чем? Значит, сейчас, до 15 февраля, вам нужно собрать команду, придумать идею какого-то приложения в одной из 3 категорий. Категории есть следующие: инновационные проекты. Я являюсь ментором этой категории. Это самое интересное, обязательно участвуйте именно в этой, если решите участвовать. 2 категория это игры. И 3 категория это социально значимые проекты. Раньше вообще в Imagine Cup была только одна категория — социально значимые проекты. И из-за этого была жуткая конкуренция, очень сложно было, во-первых, выбрать, во-вторых, очень обидно было всегда за уши притаскивать идеи, которые не относятся, например, к социальным проектам, вот сюда их затаскивать. Поэтому в этом году компания пошла навстречу и разделила на 3 разных категории. В каждой этой категории вручается 3 первых приза. То есть и призовой фонд увеличился в 3 раза, все такое. И еще что хорошо, почему важно, что вот именно в России финал будет проходить. Каждая страна, которая просто участвует, они посылают только одну команду. Мы на правах хозяина в финал отправим целых 3 команды. То есть у российских команд будет в 3 раза больше шансов, чем у всех остальных победить. Вот. Ну и мы еще, естественно, вам будем подсуживать там. Поэтому обязательно участвуйте. И в этом году у российских студентов, у российских команд, у российских программистов есть шанс выиграть. Более того, мне еще этот конкурс чем нравится, это не просто какая-то скучная олимпиада, да, вот на которую вы пришли, там 6 часов отработали, если вы реально умный, вы всем доказали, что вы умный. Ну и что от этого? Я вот в детстве столько выиграл олимпиад, но не превратился в Билла Гейтса и не стал богатым, не стал предпринимателем. И очень жалею об этом. Здесь конкурс как раз, когда вы можете не только свои, скажем так, hard skills, да, проявить, что вы там хороший программист или хороший дизайнер. Здесь вы можете проявить свои soft skills, насколько вы хороший организатор, насколько вы хорошо можете рассказать свою идею. Вот я все ссылаюсь на себя, но вот мой пример как раз в том, что у нас был отличный программный проект, но мы совершенно не приготовили свою презентацию. Мы настолько, особенно в первый год, настолько плохо выступили, что мне не жалко, ну, сейчас я уже понимаю, что вот мы очень не зря проиграли. Поэтому здесь такой многогранный конкурс, нужен очень хороший лидер, нужен хороший ментор, который все продумает, который проследит за всеми этапами подготовки, потому что здесь важно не только то, насколько вы хороший программист будет, важно то, насколько вы хороший предприниматель, насколько вы хорошо можете, насколько вы сильно верите в свою идею, которую вы придумали, насколько вы хорошо можете эту идею продать. В общем, очень хороший такой пилотаж, попробовать себя вот в течение этого короткого периода, а получится ли у вас быть предпринимателем, получится ли у вас быть интерпренером, получится ли у вас создать что-то новое так вот с нуля и это всем продать. Еще раз про сроки хочу вам сказать, что сейчас идет как бы первый отборочный этап, когда вы заходите на сайт imaginecup.ru, скачиваете там определенный шаблон и на 5-6 страницах вордовского документа описываете нам идею своего будущего проекта. Описали эту идею, там нет никаких особых требований, главное, чтобы мы поняли, что вы будете делать, в чем будет заключаться проект. Дальше 15 февраля мы прекращаем прием заявок и отбираем на уровне регионов вот какие-то проекты, которые приглашаем на региональные отборы. К региональному отбору уже нужно привести более или менее работающую версию своего проекта. Это должна быть альфа-версия. Очень многие ребята заблуждаются, они почему-то думают, что если они едут на конкурс, то им нужно привести совершенно готовый продукт, оттестированный, идеально работающий. Это вот тоже вот была ошибка моей команды, потому что вот этого делать не нужно. Главное, чтобы ваш продукт работал настолько, насколько это необходимо, чтобы все поняли идею, которую вы закладываете в свой продукт. Не обязательно делать его прям идеальным и там оттестировать все такое. Поэтому на этапе подготовки между 15 февраля и региональным отбором, я, кстати, советую в подготовке проекта применять agile методологии. Вы пишите все фичи, которые вы хотите в свой продукт включить. И выберите самые главные, которые действительно важны, чтобы продемонстрировать, что ваша программа, что ваше приложение, там игра или какой-то программный продукт делает. Значит, разрабатывайте его, приезжайте на региональный финал. Здесь, еще раз повторюсь, главное не просто сделать приложение, потратьте столько времени, сколько нужно на презентации, чтобы вы выступали не так, как я сейчас, а подготовленными. Соберите своих друзей, соберите там своих людей, которые вас недолюбливают, пусть вас послушают, пусть вас покритикуют, чтобы вы были прям совсем готовы. Дальше, значит, вы побеждаете, вот я уверен, что все, кто там в московском региональном этом отборе будут участвовать, вы его пройдете и попадаете уже на российский финал. На российском финале мы уже строго будем отсматривать, потому что после российского финала те 3 команды, которые мы выберем, мы уже тоже, как Microsoft Россия, будем отвечать за то, чтобы вы достойно предоставили нашу страну. Здесь уже такая достаточно профессиональная команда подключится к тем, кого мы отбираем. Будут работать с вами наши евангелисты, будут работать с вами наши такие, профессиональные люди, маркетологи. Большая команда, чтобы подготовить вас так, чтобы вы достойно представили нашу страну. В конце июня, в первых числах июля, все соберутся в Петербурге на неделю. Это будет большой праздник. Приедут всякие руководители нашей компании, соберутся руководители ведущих российских IT-компаний, там Касперские, Эбби, Параллелсы. В общем, все там будут. Соберется вот эта вот толпа там в 1000 человек, там насыщенная программа, помимо самого участия, еще всякие семинары, всякие социальные активности. В общем, очень-очень интересно. Если хоть у кого-то из вас есть шанс попасть, обязательно не упустите свой шанс, обязательно участвуйте в Imagine Cup. Теперь ближе к тому, о чем сегодня лекция. Нам повезло. В этом году к нам в очередной раз приехал, нет, в этом году, но в очередной раз не в смысле в этом году, а в смысле, что вот опять второй раз всего-навсего за всю историю нашу, на деятельность нашей компании в России к нам приехал Брайан Харри. Брайан Technical Fellow нашей компании. Это самое значительное достижение, которого может добиться в нашей компании, будучи инженером. Для этого нужно сделать большой вклад и нужно быть таким виженери человеком, да, человеком, который задает вижен. Брайан, у него очень интересная биография, он сейчас, I'm talking about you. У него очень интересная биография, он, например, не закончил университет, не доучился. Да, вы, наверное, слышали, что и Билл Гейтс не доучился в университете, и Стив Джобс не доучился. Такое впечатление, что нужно было бросать университет, тогда бы я тоже стал каким-нибудь Стивом Джобсом. Ну, неважно. Брайан тоже не доучился, бросил, начал свой стартап, создал проект, который впоследствии купила наша компания, который теперь называется Visual Source Safe. Это на самом деле наш злейший конкурент, мы до сих пор не можем этот продукт победить, настолько он хорош, настолько он всем нравится. Вот. Но теперь вот Брайан делает конкурента своего предыдущего продукта. В общем, очень запутанная история. Но сейчас Брайан работает в команде, которая разрабатывает технологии платформы разработки и отвечает за продукт, который у нас называется Team Foundation Server. Это, как уже понятно из названия, серверное решение, которое позволяет организовать полный цикл разработки программного обеспечения. И это такая реализация нашего подхода, нашего видения к вот этой проблеме. Потому что, ну, вообще есть разные подходы. Есть, например, подход того же IBM, да, где они считают, что вам нужно прочитать такие большие талмуды, сдать кучу сертификаций и изучить много всего того, что вам не нужно. Наш подход, он очень практичный. Почему мне нравится то, что делает Брайан и его команда? Тем, что у них очень прагматичный подход. Они смотрят не на то, чтобы делал какой-нибудь теоретик. Они смотрят на то, чем живете вы, чем живут программисты, как работают команды программистов и как сделать так, чтобы максимально автоматизировать те рутинные задачи, которые вам ежедневно приходится выполнять, чтобы организовать совместную разработку программного обеспечения. Как сделать так, чтобы вы могли абстрагироваться от всех технических сложностей, всякой рутины, которая в это вовлечена, и сконцентрироваться только на разработке программного обеспечения. И, в общем-то, ну, очень здорово, что в расписании Брайана нашелся этот час, и что он может и с вашей аудиторией поделиться нашим видением, тем, как мы видим современную разработку программного обеспечения, и тем, как это все реализовано вот в текущей версии Team Foundation сервера. Я передаю слово Брайану, чтобы он уже начал рассказывать что-то интересное, помимо того, что я тут наговорил. Брайан.
Good. Thank you. All right. Thank you. I didn't understand a word of it, so thank you very much for having me here today. I really appreciate that. I apologize for not speaking Russian. I wish I did, but I don't. So I will try to speak not too fast, and hopefully you'll be able to understand me. I may repeat a little bit of what Denise said. My name is Brian Harry. I've been at Microsoft about 18 years. I never thought I was going to work for a big company. I started out of college, did a startup. We did an electronic mail program back before anybody knew what electronic mail was, before the internet. And that was my first job, and I was the main programmer on what was called Da Vinci email. And I did that for about 3 years and decided I wanted to go do another startup. So me and 2 of my friends left to go start another company, and we decided to build a version control system, which we ultimately called SourceSafe, and was acquired by Microsoft in 1994. And that's how I ended up at Microsoft, and kind of the rest is history. So I've now been there 18 years and worked on a bunch of Microsoft products, all in the developer space, always having something to do with developers. I've kind of been a developer my whole life, and I've also sort of managed very, very large software development projects. Probably the largest, about 3,000 people working on a version of Visual Studio. So done a bunch of stuff and had a lot of fun doing it. So today I'm going to talk to you a bit about what I call modern application development. And really it's sort of 2 parts. One is about what do I mean by a modern application. We launched Windows 8 this year, and we launched a new version of Visual Studio, and we've been talking to people about building modern applications, and I've come to realize we haven't done a very good job actually describing what we think a modern application is. What constitutes or what makes an application modern. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, And then I'm going to talk a bit about the process of building applications and how that's evolving. And then I'm going to do some demos of Visual Studio and how it can help you build some modern applications. So I was going to start by talking a little bit about some of the trends that are happening in computing today. Some of these are talked about a lot, some a little less so. So the first one is consumerization of IT. And what that means, I guess, is that sort of your computing, your work, the work you do on computers is more and more becoming a part of your social life. It's just a part of the way you live. It's no longer sort of this clear separation between I'm at home and I'm doing home things, or I'm with friends and I'm at work and I'm doing work things. The two are blending. And they're blending both in the kinds of computing devices and experiences I'm using. You know, it used to be I had my work PC and I had my home PC. And if I really wanted to, I could use RAS or something and dial into work and access that. And maybe I could access my email via the internet, but they were pretty distinct things. And now, you know, I carry around my phone, and what's the main thing I do on my phone? I read email. That's like my number one use, right? And I'm doing email all hours of the day. I'm doing it in the morning, I'm doing it at night, I'm doing it while I'm waiting for the bus. I'm sort of always engaged in work in some form. I get alerts, people IM me, and I'm sort of constantly engaged. And you know, it used to be 10 years ago that if I sort of looked at the computing that I had at work versus the computing that I had at home, work was way better. I had a faster network. I had good internet access. I had a high-performance PC, maybe 2 or 3 of them. I had a laptop. I had a bunch of stuff that made me very productive, and it made for a very good computing experience. And now, the way we find ourselves is that many people, might say most, have better computing experiences at home than they have at work. The devices they have are better, they're richer, they have, in fact, often better network connectivity at home, so they have better internet access. So we're seeing these two things blending, and that has implications for how we build software and what kind of software we need to build. Next thing is form factors. You know, it used to be I had my desktop PC and a monitor. Maybe I had a laptop, but that was pretty much it. You know, then Apple came along and they shoved the monitor and the computer in one box and had a new form factor there. But now form factors are exploding. You know, I carry my laptop around with me. I have a desktop at work. I have a desktop at home. I have a tablet that I carry around with me. I have a phone. I don't have a Kindle. I suspect some of you do, or Kindle-like form factors, because this is great for certain things. It's a little big and a little heavy if I just want to be sort of casually reading something on a bus. So sort of form factors are exploding, and people use different devices for different things. Devices become sort of more special purpose of, you know, this is the one I use for reading, and this is the one I use for development, and this is the one I use for communication. So we have, as we build our software, we've got to think about the multitude of devices, and we have to think about the fact that while they do become somewhat specialized, there's also things that I want to be true across all of them. I want connectivity as sort of my core things like email and certainly stuff like that. I want connection to my friends across all of my devices. So next is social. More and more my computing experience is becoming social. It's an inherent part of people's social life, They use it to talk with their friends. They use it to learn what their friends are doing. They use it to meet new people. Some people know more people through software than they do in real life. And it is also changing the way we think about what we're trying to do with software. Ease of acquisition really changes a bunch of things about how people experience software and what they do with it. It used to be I would order software online, or I would go to the store and I would buy it, and it might take hours, it might take days, it might take weeks to get the software that I want and install it on my computer. And I'd also often pay quite a lot for it. Now, if I want a new application for my phone, what do? I go to the marketplace, I download it, it takes 30 seconds, something like that. I pay a few dollars for it, and I've got a new application. If I don't like it, I delete it, and I go find another application that I like. So that's fundamentally changed the dynamics of how we ship software, how we sell software, and how we get people interested in and captivated by our software, because software is so much more fluid now. People can try new things. They can move off of your app if they don't like it. It's less sticky than it used to be. And then lastly, there's data everywhere. So data is an increasingly big part of what we're doing with computing. It's been said that in the next 5 years, there will be more data generated and stored than there has been in all of history. The rate at which we are creating new data, we are persisting it, whether it's tracking what searches you're doing on the web, whether it's tracking, I don't know about about Russia, but in the U.S. they now have power meters in houses take meter readings on power consumption regularly and send that back to the power company. The world is becoming instrumented, and we've got all of this data about what people are doing and how they're doing it and how they're using it. And all of that is there for us to learn from and make the world better for people. It will enable us to make the world better for people. But it requires an immense amount of computing to figure out how to deal with that. So you see, sort of whole new systems evolving around business intelligence and scalable data manipulation to help you figure out how to manage data. All right, so these are some of the key trends. So then we think about what these trends mean. They're changing the kinds of applications that we're building. And I'm not going to spend much time on this slide because I've got a bunch of drill down into this. But you think about it in terms of devices, you think about it in terms of cloud, people and software and data. I'm going to sort of spend some time talking about each of those. So devices. How has that changed software? Well, with devices, people expect rich and interactive applications. So sort of gone are the days of the dialog box with an OK and a cancel button. I mean, it's not that we'll never build one of those, but that is not kind of the experience people want. People want video, they want audio, they want 3D, they want touch, they want interactive applications that feel natural, that are visually appealing, that are nice to look at, and fit very well the scenario. You get these very nice visual page turning metaphors as I'm flipping pages in a book instead of sort of scrolling a scroll bar down and watching text go by. People want these visually appealing and interactive applications. They're also diverse. So with the diversity of devices has generated diversity of applications, both sort of in both senses, both in the sense that I build applications that are sometimes very customized to a specific form factor, and sometimes I build applications that run well across many form factors. And then I have to think about how I construct my app so that it's going to run on all of these things, and often from more than one vendor. How many of you not to be too silly here, but how many of you have a Windows phone? I, of course, have a Windows phone. Yeah, I see about 5 hands. How many of you have an iPhone? Yeah. How many of you have an Android phone? Yeah, see? We got a lot of platforms out there, and you need to be thinking about how you're building apps that service the breadth of your customers. You can't focus only on one. So, often we need to think about how we build an app that can be accessible on many clients, but then also have deep experiences on individual clients that make the most of the devices that you're operating on. People expect their apps to be fresh. And by that I mean up to date and always evolving and changing. If I don't like an app, if there's something about it I don't like and you don't fix it, then I'm gonna give up on it. I'm gonna move on to another app. People expect that if an app is not evolving and changing and getting better, then the app's dead. I'm not interested in it. You must not be working on it anymore. It must be a dead app. So we have to think about how we work on our apps in a way that they are constantly getting better and people can see them constantly getting better before they give up on us. You want to have natural interaction. So, on this device, a keyboard is nice. I do my development here. I want a keyboard. I'm not particularly interested in writing code with a touch screen. Maybe someday, but not today. Keyboard is way better. On this one, touch is good. On my Xbox, I really like the Kinect. It's very cool. The motion sensor enables some very neat things that you couldn't do with either a keyboard, a controller, touch. So think about the wide variety of input mechanisms that you have and what is best for your application, and then how to take advantage of the devices to build the best experience. And then lastly, I talked about input, but more generally, there's a lot of sensors on devices now. You've got motion sensors, video cameras that can do both still and motion photography, audio input and output. What else? You've got GPS, of course. You've got just a ton of sensors that you can take advantage of in your applications that enable you to build experiences that no one would have dreamed of 5 years ago. All right. So that was devices. Let's talk about the cloud. The cloud is also changing, is enabling change. It's enabling a bunch of the things that I talked about in terms of the trends. I want to be able to access my apps and my data no matter where I am, 24 hours a day, anytime, from any device. The cloud is a great platform for doing that. I don't have to worry about the infrastructure. I don't have to worry about network connectivity. I can use a vendor's cloud platform, install my app up there, and know that it's always available. It's available anywhere I want. They're very highly reliable. They provide scale, so I might build a simple little app today, but then in 6 months have 1 million people using it. And I need to know that I can grow that app very quickly, because if I can't, it's very likely that app is going to hit a ceiling. It's going to start to perform badly. It's going to start to give my users a bad experience. Then they're just going to go away. They're going to go find somebody else's app that they like better. So I want that ability to scale my app to however large it needs to go. And the cloud architecture enable me to do that. So social, some of this is obvious, but a couple points I want to make. Of course, social is about connecting me with my friends and enabling me to communicate and keep track of them. But there's a little more to it than that. Social also implies personal, that I want my software, my devices, I want them to know about me. I want them to know what I like, and I want them to tune the experience that I get based on what I like. Now, there's a bunch of privacy issues that we have to be thoughtful around that, so that I don't have some company out there tracking everything I do and trying to take advantage of me. But I do want my devices to know me and I want them to sort of provide the experience that's best for me. I also want to use software to expand my network. So it's not just about interacting with my friends, but it's about making new friends. It's about finding people who have interests that are similar to mine and getting connected and then having conversations and learning from each other. And then applications are more and more data rich, and we need to provide that richness. Now, there's two dimensions to that. One is the level to which I consume data, whether it's map data or it's economic data or whatever. I'm consuming lots of data in the world as I construct my apps, zip code data. But apps also generate data, and we need to be thinking about how our apps generate data and and capture data and take advantage of that. Like when you think about, I'll say something that's probably obvious, when you think about Facebook, what's great about that app? It's not great, it's not a great UI, it's not a bad UI, but it's not a great UI. It's great because of the data that it has. It has a social network in it that nothing else in the world has. And you have to be on Facebook because everybody else is on Facebook. So when we think about the kind of apps we're building, we want to be thinking about the data that we're collecting and generating that is enabling our app to sort of be that snowball that picks up more and more usage. All right, so I'm going to very briefly go through sort of products that we've shipped in the last year and relate it a little bit to the trends and the technology things I've just said. This has been a big year for products at Microsoft. We've shipped new versions of just about every single product that we have. So when you think about apps and devices, we've obviously shipped Windows 8. We built and shipped the Surface. Which is, by the way, this is a Surface. If anybody wants to after come up and just look at it and play with it, feel free. I'm happy to let you try it out. New versions of the Windows Phone. Worked with Nokia to launch some new phone devices. Expanded Connect to work with Windows, so now it goes beyond gaming, and we're now starting to see a bunch of interesting engineering and medical and various other applications that are involving motion sensing. New versions of Internet Explorer, Office, the marketplaces, the Xbox Smart Glass that allows me to control my Xbox from tablets and phones. So a ton of stuff in the device space that makes my device experience richer and more connected. We've also done a lot in the cloud space. We've continued to release new versions of Windows Azure regularly. In fact, I think not a month goes by that we don't ship some enhancement to Windows Azure. We shipped Windows Server 2012, which was a major improvement to Windows Server that really enables cloud computing in a way that we've never had before. Consumer things like SkyDrive now enable me to store my documents in the cloud and access them easily from everywhere. Bing, Microsoft account, Office 365, our first truly cloud-powered version of Office, and Team Foundation Service, which of course is a service that my team builds, so I couldn't leave that off the list. And then we've done a bunch in the social space too. We've made 2 large acquisitions here in the last year or so. With Skype and Yammer, that I think is really going to enable us to be more engaged than ever before in providing social experiences for people. Bing with our Facebook integration, we've done a lot of work there for social, Link, etc. And then for data, of course, SQL Server is a big investment that we've made. There's the data marketplace on Azure that provides data streams so that you can consume them and build them into your application. Bing has also provided a bunch of data streams with maps and translation and search and stuff like that. We're also working on things like Hadoop to be able to provide large-scale data processing, BI on top of that large-scale data processing. So a bunch of work we're doing in this space. And then, of course, to sort of build and manage all of that, you have Visual Studio and System Center and Intune. So I want to spend the next couple of minutes talking about an example modern app. And I've sort of intentionally picked one that's not going to sound like a modern app because it's been around a really long time. But I say it because I want to show that even kind of old apps can be made modern by the definition that I'm using of a modern app. So let's talk about Microsoft Office and what that team is doing to turn Office into a modern app. So first, we talked about ease of acquisition. So they've made Office incredibly easy to install. Unfortunately, you can't see that very well. Has anybody installed Office 2013 yet? Okay, a few people. Is it at all like installing any previous version of Office? I think it took me about 2 minutes to install Office 2013. You don't even feel like you're installing it. You just click and a PowerPoint slide comes up and tells you a little bit about the new features of Office, and then you're using Office. It takes hardly any time at all. Good, you can see it there. I can't see it here. Adding extensions or enhancements to Office are now available via Store. So they've made it super easy to acquire Office in the first place. They've made it super easy to extend it, both with extensions from Microsoft and extensions from third parties. It's device optimized, so doing a bunch of work in that space. So here's a new feature in Office 2013 Word that is a reader that provides a mode that's tuned for tablets to make reading Office documents really easy on tablets with the appropriate touch controls, etc. Here's Outlook, added touch interface to Outlook that makes managing your mail good. Now, if they would just get that on the Surface RT, I'd be happy. The mail client on the Surface RT is not very good. And of course, phones. So we've built customized experiences of Office to work on phones. This is PowerPoint and the experience of viewing a PowerPoint presentation on a Windows 8 phone. Cloud enabled. So now Office 2013, by default, everything goes to SkyDrive. Super easy to share, super easy to have your documents wherever you are, on whatever device you're on. I save every document to SharePoint. It shows up on my tablet, it shows up on my phone, it shows up on my PC. Super easy, and super easy for me to make it available to one of my friends if I want to share a document with one of my friends. The Office web apps make it possible to have my document experience on any device, right? So I showed a minute ago a tablet optimized Word. I showed a phone optimized PowerPoint. These are native apps for those devices. These are web apps that will then run across any device, including iPads or iOS or Android. And the web apps understand form factor and provide an experience via HTML5 that's a good experience on the various device form factors. So here's an Excel spreadsheet running on an iPod. So it's pretty cool. And richness. Some of these slides just they're too dark. They've done a bunch of work to make Office more content rich. This is an example of Word has made it tremendously more easy to put video into your documents and make your documents more interactive. And social. So here, Office knows who you are. So with Office 2013, you have an account. You log in. It knows who you are. It knows what services you're connected to. So you can connect it to LinkedIn. You can connect it to Facebook. You can connect it to the Office 365 account. And it knows your connections, and it makes it super easy for you to surface that within your Office productivity experience. All the apps also make it super easy for you to share your information with your friends. So I can invite people to my team. I can send email, present documents online, publish them as blog posts. Makes it super easy for me to share with a clearly defined set of friends, or globally through something like a blog or Twitter. Oh, I was going to stop there. So there's just some examples of how you sort of take those trends, turn it into sort of a set of technology ramifications, and then apply those to a very old suite like Office, and how you can take that and turn it into a much richer, much more sort of modern application experience. So all that said, there's a bunch of new stuff about modern apps. There's a bunch of stuff that doesn't change either. So apps still need to be high quality, they need to be cost effective, they need to be delivered on time, they need to solve the need. Like, it's no use building an app if nobody likes it when you're done. It's got to be a popular app that people like and enjoy using, and actually solves the problems that they set out to solve. So these things, of course, are nothing new. This has been true for as long as we've been building software. So there's plenty of things that are still the same, and there's plenty of things that are new and different. So now I'm going to sort of transition from talking about what is a modern app to talking about some trends in how we build apps. So first, the pace of change, the rate of change is just happening faster and faster. The speed at which our businesses are evolving, the speed at which technology is evolving, new devices coming out, new form factors, new platforms, it's just happening faster and faster. And it's requiring us as software developers to be able to react to that change, to build applications today that meet today's needs. I don't have a year to build something, because a year from now it's going to be too late. It's something new will have happened and will have changed even what I need to accomplish. So as a result, I must build applications incrementally. I can't have sort of I need to clearly have a vision, but I can't have sort of a long, dark development period where I go invest heavily, build an app, and come out with it, because, as I said, it'll be too late. So I need to figure out how to come up with an idea and deliver that in small increments, and then evolve it with my user base. In fact, kind of the trend, there was a book written called The Lean Startup that talks about this phenomenon in a process they call build, measure, learn. And that's what I'm going to talk some more about in a minute. Has anybody read or heard of The Lean Startup? It's a good book. If you haven't, I encourage you to look at it. I think the author, how do I say, he's maybe a little too, he's trying to go too far with a good idea, but it's a good idea that I think is worth spending some time thinking about. So cloud development changes a bunch about the way we build applications. So, I built box software for many years. I've been doing this 25 years now. And, we'd go through this process of having to test our software unbelievably rigorously. In fact, we would spend more time testing our software than building our software. We'd have more people doing testing, we'd spend more time doing testing, because once we released that software, we had no idea what you're going to do with it, what you're going to install it on, how you're going to use it or misuse it, or use it in ways that we never imagined. So we had to spend an incredible amount of time testing it to make sure that it was right, because once we gave it to you and you installed it, we had no way to update it, right? Or at least it was very painful for us to be able to update it. The cloud changes that. The cloud, now I control the software. I can update it when I need to. So I often give an example. So I run the Team Foundation service. That's a service that we build. And we ship every 3 weeks. So new features go out on the service every 3 weeks. And inevitably, we ship some bugs. It happens almost every deployment. We ship some number of bugs. But The difference between now and then, sort of pre-cloud, is we just fix them. So if I shipped a bug, let's see, we last shipped to the cloud a week ago, Monday, so a week ago today. We shipped, I think, 3 or 4 bugs in that cloud release. By Wednesday, all of them were fixed. So the cloud gives you this ability to iterate, to put something out there, realize that there are some issues and address them. And in fact, I'm going to talk some more about techniques you can use to sort of control the damage in case you do have bugs in production. Customer connection is another incredibly important part of the modern app lifecycle. You need, as choice has evolved and people are able to move between apps much more easily, it's super important that you understand who your users are, what they like about your software, what they don't like about your software, how they use your software, when they use your software, what they use it for. These are all incredibly important things. Any issues, any bugs they're hitting, you want to know about them. So instrumenting your software, whether it's in the cloud or it's on a device, you want to understand what your users are doing. It allows you to optimize, to build the best application for your users. Don't waste time building features nobody's going to use. Understand what features people use and then invest in those things and make your app something that people are going to love. Another trend in application lifecycle management is the disciplines are gradually converging. Used to be very, very separate disciplines. You had developers, they wrote the code. You had testers, they tested it. Developers didn't believe in testing. They would write it, and then they would expect a tester to test it. And when the testers were done testing it, they would hand it to somebody in operations who would deploy it and run it. And it might take them several months for them to do that. If they had an issue, they sort of did ops things. In fact, we're sort of still in the middle of that transition with ops, of really having that come together. I guess I'll tell you a story in a minute. But it kind of started with the merging of dev and test, with sort of more realization that that developers are responsible for the quality of their applications. And while the world still needs people who test, it is important that we have testers. It's now more of a collaborative exercise than it is a separate exercise. Developers and testers work together. We operate our development organization as Scrum teams, and the developers and the testers work together in the same Scrum team. And if there's a lot more testing to do, then the developers do a lot of the testing. If there's more development to do, then sometimes testers do development. And we more and more are thinking about them as just engineers. We just have engineers. Sometimes you're doing development and sometimes you're doing testing. And then sort of the more recent one is the merger of development and operations. Cloud has been enabling that. We're seeing sort of I don't want to say the elimination, because I don't think ops is ever going to go away, but a significant change in the relationship between development and operations. I've been operating a service internally at Microsoft for almost 10 years now, not quite, maybe 8 years. So we run Team Foundation Server in Microsoft as a service for Microsoft developers. About 37,000 Microsoft employees use Team Foundation Server, and there's an operations team in our IT department that runs it. It is a very traditional operations team. So whenever something goes wrong in the service, the first thing they do is reboot the server, right? Because their number one, they don't understand anything about the application. They don't know how it works. All they know is they've got a bunch of users using this app and it needs to be working. So they will kind of do whatever they have to do to get that back up and working. But what's the problem when that's what you do? If the first thing you do is reboot the server, you've lost all the information about what happened, why it happened. It's hard to fix it when the first thing they do is reboot the server. So when we look at the Team Foundation service, we've changed dramatically how this works. We operate Team Foundation service. The operations team I have is in my team. They sit with my team. They work with my team. They understand the service. They help They help actually design and develop the service. Developers are on call. Developers have pagers. If something horrible goes bad at 3 o'clock in the morning, a developer gets a call, because we're going to find out what caused any issue that happened. I'm going to have a developer or a tester, an engineer, involved in any incident. They're involved in any root cause analysis, in any resolution to the incident. This has fundamentally changed sort of the dynamics, and as a result, we patch the server a lot more often, because whenever we find an issue, the number one question is, how are we going to avoid this issue ever occurring again? Not how are we going to get the service back up as quickly as possible. I do care about that, but I care more, how am I going to avoid this issue ever happening again? And then teams are distributed. So another trend, more and more, teams are spread around the world, working closely together. Look at my team as just one of many examples. I've got a bunch of people who work in Redmond. I've got a bunch of people who work in North Carolina, which, by the way, is where I work. So that's 3,000 miles apart. I've got somebody in Philadelphia, somebody in England, somebody in, where is he? Bulgaria. I've got some people in India. I've got some people in China. I've got people all over the globe on my team working together on a regular basis. And figuring out how to do that when, quite honestly, many of these people you will never meet face to face. You will never meet them. How do we use technology and how do we enable the software development process to work well when we have people spread all around the world? So, those are some of the trends. Now I was going to talk a little bit about some of the sort of the techniques that are coming. I mentioned build, measure, learn. I want to talk a little bit about that one. Build, measure, learn is this notion that let me step back for a second. How many of you have heard of Agile? You know what Agile is? Agile software development, Scrum. Come on, some more of you have heard of it. Raise your hand. Don't be afraid. All right. Agile is a set of practices that started evolving about 10 years ago that sort of defined a new way to build software. So rather than saying kind of the traditional way of, I'm going to design software, I'm going to spend months designing the architecture, specifying all of the behaviors, costing how long it's going to take to build all of those things, building a detailed schedule that was a year long or 2 year long or 6 month, whatever sort of was appropriate, schedule for building that, define sort of my set of people who are going to work on it, and then build it, and then I'm done. And Agile said, that doesn't work. Agile said within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, all that planning is gone because something changed. Requirements changed. You realized something in your design that was wrong. Fundamentally, that model of doing software development doesn't work. Now, you can go anywhere from very strict waterfall to sort of very strict Agile, and then there's a lot in between. So as with anything, I don't particularly believe in following any methodology exactly, but learn from each of these methodologies and figure out how to apply them to how you build software. Agile sort of taught a method that said, instead of this intense planning, focus on plan, I'm going to focus on progress. I'm going to create a vision for what I'm going to do. I'm going to break it down into sort of a high-level what they call backlog, a list of things that I'm going to build, and then I'm going to pick off a few things and start building them. And when I'm done with them, I'm going to pick off the next few things and build those. And rather than focusing on exactly when I'm going to be done and exactly what the feature set is when I'm done, I'm going to focus more on progress. Let's maximize getting as much done as quickly as I can than worrying about what's going to happen a year from now, because it's going to change whatever I think is going to happen a year from now anyway. And so there's a whole bunch of practices that sort of fundamentally enable that sort of rapid development model. And it's become very popular. I'd say most of the studies I've seen show roughly 80% of software development organizations have adopted some agile practices in how they do software development. The thing about agile, though, is it really talks about how you build the software, and it doesn't really have anything to say about what you build. So agile, you could apply it to, in fact, it doesn't even have to be software. You can apply it to anything that is work. It is a way of managing work and making progress on work. There's now a new practice called sort of lean development, lean teams, lean startups. There's various words for it. That sort of adds to agile. That is not really so much about how you build the software, but more about what you're building and a sort of a process for thinking about what you're building. And the theory is this. The theory is, I have an idea. I have an idea of something I want to build that I think would be a really cool app that I think people are really going to like, that's going to solve a need. But I might not be right. It might not be a good idea. It might be a really bad app and nobody wants to use it. So how am I going to figure out whether I'm right or not? Am I going to go build this app and then put it out there and see how many people use it? Well, that's a pretty inefficient thing if I'm wrong, if it is not a good idea. So what Lean says is start with an idea and start with a hypothesis or an assumption about your idea. And then build kind of the absolute minimum thing you can to test your idea, what they call a minimum viable product. So what's kind of the minimum thing I can do to test it? And the writer of the book has some very interesting examples of, he had I don't remember them all well, but he gave some examples of, he had an idea for a product that he had no idea whether the world wanted, but he thought it was a cool idea. So the first thing he did was run an ad for the product. He never built it, never had anything. He just ran an ad for the product. And that was his minimum viable product to test whether or not anybody was interested in that app. All right? So you have to think creatively about what minimum viable product is, because it doesn't actually always mean building something. But it means whatever you need to do to test whether or not your idea is a good idea. So you come up with a vision of, this is what I want. You come up with a hypothesis that says, hey, I have an idea, I think this. You then build sort of whatever the minimum viable product is, deliver that to customers, and then measure how customers react. Whatever it is, whether it's buying your product or using your product or downloading your product or signing up or sending messages or making connections or whatever it is, behavior you're trying to get people to do, you measure that behavior. The other thing he makes a bunch of arguments about are sort of along the lines of, people are not actually very good about saying what they like and what they don't like and what they want. They don't always know what they want. So the best way to actually figure out whether somebody wants it is to give it to them and see what they do. So we've done a bunch. A lot of software development has been guided by user studies and things like that. And basically he says, don't. It's not like don't ever do it, but focus more on delivering something and watching what people do. So instrument your app, understand how it's going to get used, bring all of that back, analyze all of that data, and then create another hypothesis, another idea, build another minimum viable product, deliver it, watch what people do with it, and then iterate. So we iterate on sort of gradually building up the functionality of the app, sometimes realizing that this idea that we had, while sort of the long-term idea was a good idea, the way we were going to present it to people didn't work. People didn't like it. It didn't drive the behavior that we wanted. So we had to make significant shifts in our approach to the problem along the way. And sort of the lean startup and the build, measure, learn cycle allows me to do that with sort of a minimal amount of throwaway work. So one of the big concepts behind lean is called minimizing waste. And anytime you spend time doing something that turns out not to provide value for you in the long term, it's waste. So you want to focus on minimizing that waste. So if I then sort of take that a little bit further, we can talk about the various activities in software development around sort of this build, measure, learn cycle. No matter what, you still have some phase of coming up with an idea and defining what that idea is. You've got some work to develop that idea into a minimum viable product. You have some work to deploy or deliver that to a customer. You often, although not always, then have something that you're operating. Certainly if it's a cloud capability of some type, you're operating it. You then have something called adaptation, which I'll come back to in a second. And then you have feedback. So you gather data out of people's use and you feed that back into your product backlog and into the next cycle. So a word about adaptation. So I talked about build, measure, learn. And I talked about like in our cloud service how we ship bugs and that's okay. And adaptation is an important part of that. There's a couple things. I talk about exposure control and experimentation. And what exposure control is it's the ability to target individual customers or sets of customers with changes. So let's take Team Foundation Service again. Team Foundation Service is a cloud app. There's only one of them. There's one Team Foundation Service in the world, and if I update it with a new version of the software, it's that one copy is updated. I don't, in the old days I'd run a beta and I'd ship you three guys a copy of the beta. You'd play with it for a while and you'd give me some feedback on whether you like it or not. And if you did, maybe I'd run a broader beta and some more of you would get it. And then once I felt good about it, I'd ship it, right? And that was this process of making sure that by the time I shipped it, the software's super, super solid. In the cloud, there's only one of them, so I can't ship multiple cloud apps to the different of you. So we have a mechanism we call feature flags, but sort of is more generally called exposure control, that allows me in my cloud service to identify individual users or account holders and expose capabilities only to that set of people. So when we roll out a new update to our software, we'll generally only expose that update to a small section of our users. In fact, if you were to go use our cloud service today, there are a bunch of features that are on the cloud service that you can't see today because we have not exposed them to you yet. We have a group of early adopters that we do expose them to that they can try, and then once we get to the point that we feel good about them, we can expose them to the world. And then the second is experimentation. And the experimentation is, in a sense, a way of exposure control, but with a different purpose to it. Experimentation is sometimes called A/B testing or flight testing. And it is the ability to take, I've got an idea for a change that I want to make. I'm trying to make users more successful doing something. Maybe let's take Team Foundation Service, and I want people to check in more source code files. That's my goal. And I've got an idea for a change I could make to my application. In fact, let me take a concrete example rather than a hypothetical one. So on our service, we have discovered, the service is very instrumented, we have discovered that a lot of people sign up for accounts for the service. Tons, hundreds of thousands of people sign up for accounts for the service. But a very large percentage, like way more than should, I think 20 or 30% of the people who sign up never actually create a project on the service. So they've created an account, but they never did anything with the account. That drives me crazy. I don't understand why we're losing these people. We're getting them interested enough to sign up, but then they don't do anything with it. So that's a problem I want to solve. So A/B testing or experimentation is a great example. So you develop a theory. Here's why I think people are signing up for accounts and not creating projects. You can then make a change to your software that enables, that you think will improve people creating projects. You can then use A/B testing to expose that change to a randomly selected, or sometimes not so randomly if you want to do it not so randomly, subset of people. So maybe you want to have, half the people see the old behavior and half the people see the new behavior. And what you want to do is measure how much better project signups are with the new experience versus, or project creation in this example, with the new experience versus the old experience. And in modern services, if you look at somebody like Azure or somebody like Facebook or somebody like Bing, we're running these kinds of A/B tests constantly, daily. Every day you put some change up there. You start running a percentage of your people through the new software. You measure the behavior change that you wanted. You learn from that, and then either accept the change or discard the change because it did not have the desired effect. And you'd be surprised how often the desired effect is unintuitive. Like, you think something's actually going to improve things, and then it in fact actually makes them worse. So it's a very powerful tool. So if you sort of then accept that a lot of everything that I've sort of been building up to here about changes in sort of user behavior around applications, changes in technology, changes in sort of approach to development, then what you'll realize is the number one thing you have to optimize for in building software is iterating. You have to optimize for getting around this loop as quickly as you possibly can, because each loop is another increment of value. And your goal is to deliver if your goal is to deliver very small increments of value, learn from them and continue to build, then you've got to be able to get from idea to development to deployment to operation, adaptation, and feedback, and back into next idea very quickly. That is your limiting factor in your ability to deliver value to your customers. So when I talk about the modern app lifecycle and what we're doing in Visual Studio, a lot of what we're doing is fundamentally about speeding that flow through that loop. All right. So I don't know, how much time do I have left, Danny? Do you know?
My phone is dead.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's just 15 minutes.
15 minutes, okay, great. So I was going to talk a little bit about, and maybe I'll do some demos, maybe I won't, about some of the stuff that we've done in Visual Studio 2012 to sort of help speed this process. So in 2012, we focused on sort of three of the phases: define, develop, and operate. I think I also had deploy and experiment and feedback. I think you'll see in our next release we're going to be focused on those areas. So in 2012, these were the big areas that we focused on. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the ways in which we tried to address that. So fundamentally trying to remove friction on any part of this. So in definition, the friction is building the wrong thing, right? That's like the worst thing you can do, is you can come up with an idea and then you can go build it and then have nobody like it, right? That's complete waste of time. So the number one thing that you've got to figure out is how to make sure that anytime I invest in building something, that I'm getting the most value out of it. So we focused on trying to help people very quickly get at whether or not people are going to like what they're building. Sort of, in other words, make your minimum viable product really minimal. So I'll show you a couple things. I want to save a few minutes for questions, so I probably will not do too much here. But like one thing we built is a storyboarding tool. So rather than having to build software, oops, this is left over from before my demo, from my last demo, I'd like to be able to sit down with a user and say, hey, I have this idea for an app. This is kind of what I think the experience is going to look like. Do you like it? Do you understand it? We actually even sometimes take these storyboards and print them and have like a stack of them and bring in people to go through and pretend like these storyboards are screens and, click and sort of move through the storyboards to see if people understand how they use them, and to get an early read on it. So we used PowerPoint as our storyboarding tool. And so I sort of have this hypothetical scenario of this app, which is a fiber company that has customers. It's a communications company, and this is their support site, and this is a customer on their support site. And I'd like to have a history. I'd like to add to this site a customer history so that when I go look up a customer, I can easily understand what issues they've had, who's worked with them before, stuff like that. So with storyboarding, I can do that super easy. I'll just say, I want a list. Okay, that looks like, a list. And I want to have, maybe the date that the thing happened. I want to know who the service representative was that helped them. And maybe I want a description of the problem that they had. So, do that. Use 3 columns because that's all I need. Maybe do that, and I'd like a label. Take that, drop that on here, call it history, and maybe I want the font to be a little bit bigger, maybe I want it red, maybe etc. So it's just super easy to mock up your app. We've got phone controls. So if I wanted to, in fact, I could do could do a phone and mock up a phone app. We've actually even got iOS, iPhone, iPad shapes. So web browser shapes, Windows shapes. Super easy to just mock up what the experience is. You can use PowerPoint animation to actually show what the interaction with the app would look like. So a super, super light way to get a very early read on whether or not people are gonna, like the idea that you have. Another thing that we did in this release, was we did an agile project management capability in Team Foundation Server that makes it super easy to manage my work and collaborate among my team on the work that I have to do. So I keep a backlog. I talked about the idea of a prioritized backlog of the ideas that I have. I can super easily reorder it if I think that's maybe the top priority thing now, or maybe that's the top priority. If I want to add a new one, I can add it. I can prioritize it where I want it to be. I can drag it to a sprint. A sprint is kind of an iteration, and have it assigned to be worked on. I can look at a sprint, see all of the things that are being worked on right now, break them down into subtasks, see who's working on those subtasks. I can assign something to somebody simply by dragging it over onto them. I can visualize the progress of my work on what's called a task board that enables me to see the various requirements or user stories change, whether it's in progress or maybe that one's done now. So super easy to be able to manage through that. We have a burn down chart that sort of shows progress that's dynamically updated as I move stuff. You can see that burn down chart. Well, I'm getting a lot done. I just keep moving it. So this allows me to easily manage my work and to share my priorities and my progress with anybody on the team who wants to see it, including my stakeholders. So both of these are sort of key around helping me make sure that I'm building the right thing. I'm building something people like, and I'm focusing on the right priorities. So I'm sort of working through that in priority order. Let's see. So the next phase we talked about is develop, and there's a few things here that I want to highlight. One of the biggest, when we look at sort of streamlining the development process, one of the things that we saw was one of the biggest problems is sort of the problem of interruptions. You get deep working on some problem. Somebody comes along and they need you to look at something. They've got a bug they need you to fix. There's a production incident you need to look at. They got some code that they need you to review, and they interrupt you and they get you out of your work, and it's super hard to get back into it. So we built a feature in Visual Studio 2012 called My Work that makes this easier than ever to deal with. So let's. I want to make a couple changes here. Let's pull up some code. I don't know, make a change. And maybe set a breakpoint. And maybe I've got another file that I want to set a couple of bookmarks in. So I'm in the middle here of working on some code. I've got some files open, I've got some bookmarks set, I've got breakpoints set, and somebody comes in and needs me to fix a high priority bug. What am I going to do? Well, we've got a new capability that we call suspend that allows me to take all of this work. Let me save it. It would save it anyway, but to take all of this work and set it aside. So I hit suspend. It's going to it's going to ask me for a title. I didn't have a work item. Let me do this real quick. I can also drag the set of work items that I'm working on. So maybe I'm working on this work item, and I hit suspend. It automatically fills in the name of the work item. And what that's going to do is take all of that work, set it aside, save it on the server. I can go home and download that work from home. I can download it back on this machine. I can go do now whatever it is I need to do, fix whatever bug, deal with whatever issue. You'll notice that all the windows I had open are gone, so it's sort of reset my IDE to the state before I was making those changes. It's undone all my changes. I'm back to sort of the normal state. Now I'm done. Everything's good. I want to resume my work, but I don't remember quite sure what I was working on. I can go look and see what task I was working on. I can see what changes. I can even compare and see what changes I was making. All right, it looks good. Yep, I want to resume my work. So I select that item, click resume. It's going to pull all that back down. It has opened all of my windows, my work item that I was working on, my source file, my bookmark is back, my breakpoint is back. So it's restored me back to the state I was when I got interrupted to go do that other work, making it much easier for me to get back into the zone, as it were, of working on my code. So I want to save the last few minutes for some questions, but fundamentally, I could show you 10 other things like that, but fundamentally it was all about speeding the path through that cycle. Let's see where, there we go. Enabling me to go from idea to software to deployed back to idea as quickly as I possibly can. So that's kind of what we're up to and what we hope to accomplish. And I'll stop and take any questions. Denise has volunteered to do translation if necessary.
Да, в общем, если у вас какие-то, во-первых, надеюсь, что вам было интересно. Я периодически отключался, но я просто, у меня нет сил уже сегодня. Но и надеюсь, что вы слушали, что получили много новых знаний. Значит, даже если вы не говорите по-английски, спокойно задавайте свои вопросы, мы постараемся их донести до Брайана и, соответственно, до вас донести его ответ. Поэтому, если есть вопросы, вперед. Причем любые вопросы, я думаю, we're ready to accept any questions. Не только о том, что Брайан сейчас рассказывал, но и, не знаю, может, вам интересно какой-нибудь... У Брайана, кстати, есть своя собственная ферма. Он, помимо того, что работает большим менеджером Microsoft, ему интересно to do farming.
Sure.
Если вам интересно, каким трактором он пользуется или каким там комбайном...
We can talk about cows.
Пожалуйста, смелее. Если вопросов нет, тоже это отлично. Я могу написать свой e-mail. Если потом что-то вспомните, задавайте обязательно, потому что нам нравится общаться с разработчиками, с людьми, которые что-то создают. Да, все вопросы в микрофон вот еще подсказывает. Если такие будут. Вопросы есть, коллеги? Вот у меня даже микрофон есть.
I've got one stupid question. You talked a lot about iteration and iterative process and agile and so on, but Windows Office are still not delivered in iterations. They're not delivered in every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. Are you planning to introduce it into your application development process inside Microsoft?
So that's a good question, and different teams are in different spots. It depends on who your customer is and what your software's like. I mean, I actually don't think most people want a Windows update every 2 weeks, but you got to be thoughtful about that. So let me first start at home. Let me start with Team Foundation Service. So we deliver our cloud service every 3 weeks. New features ship every 3 weeks. We don't deliver Visual Studio every 3 weeks.
Yet.
We probably never will. The problem is, again, it is installed on your machine, and once we get it on your machine, our ability to sort of update it is substantially reduced. Also, in the cloud, one of the things that is really nice about the cloud is there's exactly one install topology, right? There's only one instance of it. So I only have to test it in that scenario. If I'm going to ship software to you, I've got to test it on, every machine you might have, every driver you might have, everything. My test matrix gets way higher, and therefore it's tough. Now, that said, we still develop incrementally, and we are making a big change in 2012 or post 2012, where we've started to deliver Visual Studio incrementally. So you may have, I don't know how much, has anybody heard of Visual Studio Updates? That's sort of a new program we released, where we ship updates to Visual Studio approximately every 3 months. And in fact, the first one will ship tonight at midnight, your time. It's noon Redmond time on Monday. Visual Studio Update 1 will ship. It's the first update to Visual Studio, and it's a ton of new features. Probably 30 or 40 new features. And then in the spring, we'll ship Update 2, and summer we'll ship Update 3. So we are moving to a more rapid cadence, but the cadence will always be a little difference between cloud and on-prem, and it will depend on who your customer is and what their tolerance for change, etc. are. So I expect you will also see Windows ship faster than they've ever shipped before, but it won't be exactly the same for every product. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for your time. And I have a question about IP rights. If you program an app and then somebody designs the same looking feature, how would you protect your time and resources?
Well, number one is patents. Patents are a valuable way to protect your IP. Other than that, outside of patents, there's nothing that says somebody can't copy what you do. And in fact, any legal mechanism is a poor way to enforce it. It's expensive, it's slow. So generally the way I think about it is if you want to avoid somebody copying you, what you want to do is just move faster than anybody else. Iterate faster, advance faster, stay ahead of them, because nobody wants to use a copy that's that's way behind the state of the art. IP is a tough problem.
But in Russia, it might be even a bigger problem than in America, because here I think we can't even patent source codes, or can we?
I don't know. I don't know what patent law in Russia is. In U.S., you don't patent source code per se, but you can patent algorithms. You can patent UI metaphors. You can patent enough.
And what's a UI metaphor?
Well, let me take a goofy example. I know these things sound goofy, but we patented the start button in Windows. So no one was allowed to do a start button.
You mean the shape or the function?
The function. I'm sure we patented the charms bar in Windows 8. So you can patent those kinds of approaches to solving problems.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, and could you describe your opinion? We are using TFS 2010 for a while in our company, and why should we migrate to TFS 2012?
There's a lot of reasons.
Well, main 2 or 3.
Yeah, I'll try. So there's a bunch of new stuff in TFS 2012 that I think are great capabilities. First, local workspaces allows much better offline support for TFS than we used to have. TFS in 2010 really wants to be connected to the server. If you lose your network connection, it's not a very pleasant experience. In 2012, it's much better, and I can have my TFS enlistment on my laptop, carry my laptop on the plane, and keep doing work and not have an issue. So that's nice. The Agile project management stuff that I showed for doing very simple and easy project management is another very compelling feature. We did a bunch of work around developer productivity. So you saw the My Work stuff, which is new in 2012. We also did code review. So the ability to do a nice, easy, collaborative code review either before or after the check-in. Good both to get somebody to verify the changes you made, but also good from the standpoint of making it easy for people to track what changes are being made and kind of learn from their peers as people are making changes. What else did we do? There's a few other big things. We did code clone work. So, there's a common problem of you recognize some pattern in your code that you see has a bug. And you think to yourself, I wonder how many other places in my code I did, something like this. Code clone detection allows you to select a piece of code and go find all of the other places that look like that. Now, that's not search. It's not search because it's not just looking textually. What it's actually doing, like the variable names could be different. The types could be slightly different. They could be subclasses or superclasses. It actually parses the source code, understands the structure of that source code, and then goes and finds other source code that's structured similarly. That's a pretty cool feature for finding bugs. Also good for refactoring when you find code that you think, man, I've seen this code somewhere else. Let me go find all the places somebody copy pasted that code around my app and refactor it so that I only have one copy of it to maintain. Yeah, there's a ton of new stuff that is really nice.
Еще вопросы, коллеги? Про Imaging Cup, про что угодно, про Microsoft, когда основан. Любые вопросы. Все-таки заинтересовались основанием Microsoft.
Brian, why you do not use Windows 8 on your laptop?
My God, is it true?
I don't. It's true.
Oh,
It's a
I
good
didn't
question.
know this.
I have a story for you. It's not a long story, I guess. So the reason is because my laptop died. This is not my laptop, actually. So about I don't remember, about a week before I left to come here, the hard drive on my laptop died, and I lost all my documents. I lost, everything that I had locally. Of course, I store a bunch of stuff in the cloud, so I didn't lose everything, but everything I had on that machine. And I went to the person in our office who keeps computers, and I said, I need a new computer now. I'm going out of town. And she said, all I have is this. I mean, you should see this computer. I mean, it's kind of all scraped up, beat up. This is like a 4-year-old computer that somebody had been using and upgraded to a new computer, and this was just laying around the office. So I grabbed it. That's what I have, unfortunately. But I have Win8 on my Surface.